Welcome to Beyond the Frontline podcast, where your host, U.S. Air Force veteran Donna Hoffmeyer, will help you transition from the front line to the home front. Listen every other Wednesday as we'll bring great conversations, resources, tips, and feel-good stories that will resonate and relate. Now, here's your host, Donna Hoffmeyer.
Hey everyone, it's Donna, and it is another fabulous week of Beyond the Frontline. I hope you guys are all having an outstanding week, month, day, year, all of it. I hope it's just full of abundance, gratitude, grace, love, all the good things. Hey, this week is a really fun week. I'm super excited to be interviewing this person. His name is Jason Kulchar, and not Culture, but a play on that, Kulchar. But it kind of works for him and who he is and embodies kind of his whole being. And I met Jason a couple of years ago, some exiting out of the military training is essentially what it is, some schooling. And him and I always stayed in contact. And it's led us kind of to this. And we're going to talk about the story of who he is, what he's done. And so before we get there, I'm going to kind of tell you a little bit about his background. So Jason, he is currently the Director of Learning and Developmental and Culture and Belonging at ISS North America, where he spends his day focused on what truly matters: people, purpose, and creating workplaces where everyone feels seen and valued. And before he got into this corporate world, he actually spent over 24 years in the United States Air Force. He started as an airman basic, and he retired after he achieved the rank of lieutenant colonel. So he's been on both sides of the fence, proving that with grit, heart, and a sense of humor that anything is possible. He's really known for bringing energy into every room, and I will attest to that. I was immediately attracted to Jason's personality. He's a light when he comes into the room, and he just shines really to everybody that he meets. And honestly, this is why he is doing what he's doing now. He's built a leadership legacy rooted in authenticity, connection, and a simple motto that's become his trademark: keep being awesome. And that's super funny because I say all the time, keep rocking it out. So maybe that's similar. So welcome, Jason.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So you and I met a couple years ago. I was actually helping with some training, and for the civilian audience, it's more like training's not the right word. It's, what is it? Exit strategies for retiring from the military. And so actually, I'm sitting here laughing. I just looked at something. I'll tell you that a little bit later. But so it's exit strategies coming out of the military, and we call it TAP, which is Transition Assistance Program. But they have this other one for the senior ranking people, and it's called ETAP, which is Executive Transitioning Assistance Program. And ETAP is supposed to kind of help you prepare for the next step when you're a senior ranking officer. Right? Is that good, Jason?
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it. It's specifically for like chief master sergeants or E9s and colonels and above.
Yeah, and actually that's why I started laughing. I'm like, I think I said you achieved the rank of lieutenant colonel. It's actually colonel. I thought, and like you said, you're not the one to live on your rank. Neither am I. And so I was kind of giggling. I looked down and I'm like, oh, it's all right. He was the big bird, not a little bird. So however, still up in that world, right? You're in management leadership, you're doing all that. And when you come out into the civilian world, the whole purpose of this was to give you guys some tools to kind of transition over. However, you already had like kind of another path started. I mean, you ended up in corporate world, what you're doing now, but there was something else going on underneath. So I want to talk to you about who you are coming in the military and your whole view on servant leadership.
Sure, absolutely.
So let's start from the beginning. Where are you from originally?
I am originally from Riverview, Michigan. I grew up there, a big University of Michigan and Detroit sports team fan. And when I was 18, I decided I wanted to do something different. So I enlisted in the Air Force, was an intelligence airman, and spent a couple years in. And my leadership um, really demonstrated what servant leadership it was, and was meant to care for the people on their team. And they pushed me for an opportunity. I was selected. I got to go back home and do Air Force ROTC and get my
Oh,
college
nice.
degree. And I came back in as a lieutenant and an officer. And all of that happened within a few short years. And I remembered that I had no idea what I wanted to do. I just knew that I was a young airman. My leadership took care of me, and that was part of the blueprint for who I came to wanting to take care of others when I had the opportunity.
So I find it refreshing and fascinating because I had the complete opposite experience. But I also learned the lessons from it. She's like, when I came in direct commission. So for the civilian world, a direct commission means that you have like a terminal degree. So like a lawyer or a nurse or a doctor or something like that. And they immediately give you a commission. And then you do your officer training school and all that good stuff. Um, but my leaders were not good to start. A couple of them were here and there, but I would say in my career, it was spotty on solid leadership. So I find it refreshing that somebody comes in and is like, immediately they took to me and were like pushing me to do more, and you saw that positive leadership. Would you say that continued through your whole career?
I think for the most part, yes. I think I was very fortunate into having worked for some incredible leaders, right? And
Yeah.
but I think there were also those moments, right? Like that where I worked on teams or for leaders that I was like, okay, these are the lessons that I never want to repeat. Um,
Yeah.
and and those lessons are powerful, right? I mean, those are very powerful lessons of like, okay, I know who I am. I know how I want to lead. I know how I want to give back and connect with the people on my team. And here are the moments. Don't ever do this because I know how this makes me feel. And if you were to ever repeat this, I know how this is going to make the people on my team feel.
That was always my takeaways. Always my takeaways are like, I don't want to feel like this, and I don't want to be like this. So that I relate to that a lot because it's you do one of two things, right? You either get the lesson and then repeat it because that's what you were taught, or you get the lesson and don't repeat it because you realize that that's not a good thing. So so you're moseying along. You did a couple years enlisted. You became an officer, and you're still in intel the whole
Yeah,
time.
still an
So,
intelligence officer.
so you're a pure intelist the whole career?
I was intel my whole career.
Ah, oh, a purist. I mean, besides, like, I laugh just because, like, a lawyer, they're gonna be a lawyer their whole career. There's not much else that you're really gonna do, nurse, doctor, like that. You're gonna kind of stay in those realms. But when you get into more of those non-terminal areas, intel officer or trans officer or different things like that, even on the listed side, there's room for trying out different things, or more room, I should say. Everybody's got room, but there's more room on your side. So to have a purist, that's pretty good.
I totally was. I totally was.
Wow, I like that. So when so again, for the civilian audience, just so you know, we are pushed from the very, very beginning to start taking the reins of leadership in micro bites, right? But it starts right when we go into basic training or officer training school that failure of one is failure of all, right? That's rule 101, right? So you got a jacknut in there, that's not cutting it. Everybody's paying the price, right? So we just know that that's just the way it's built because we are supposed to be built up as a team. So when was it when you started getting your your first goes at leadership in a bigger bite, so to speak, versus like, here, you're the snack bar guy. When was it you were getting your go at that?
Yeah, I think so. In the intelligence career field, you get an opportunity to lead pretty quickly depending
Mm.
on where you go. Like there's many different things that you can go do as an intelligence officer. And depending on that experience, you could get an opportunity to lead right away. That was what it was for me, right? My very first assignment as an intelligence officer, I went to Hawaii. I was assigned to an organization. I walk in on day one and they were like, here you go. Here are 80 airmen for you to lead. And for some of my peers who were also doing that, like some of them were overwhelmed. I think my enlisted experience really helped me and shaped, okay, like just go back to my roots and my foundation. I know what it was like to eat in the chow hall. I know what it was like to live in the dorms. I know what it was like to get that young airman paycheck. And so, here are the things that I need to do to help take care of them. And in some instances, that also means like having to hold them accountable. And so for me, it was just an awesome opportunity early on in my career to be able to have the opportunity to lead.
I'm sitting here thinking back, right? I'm kind of going way back here. So my CTO days, right? Company grade officer, we all went to our little CTO meetings, right? Where you interacted with your other peers, right? And me being a nurse, um, we had different leadership responsibilities, right? It wasn't the same. So I remember like some of my friends, they're telling me as like first lieutenants, they're like, oh my God, I'm, in charge of like 100 people. And 70 of them are enlisted and 50 of them live in the dorms. And I just got called to the dorms because they decided to swing out their second story window on their sheets. That was actually a true story. And I
Dorm life.
was like, what? Like, I can't even imagine our medics doing that. And they were so tired all the time. They were the ones complaining, like, my God, it's too noisy. I'm just trying to get some sleep. And so the challenges you're brought with early on were vastly different than the challenges we were brought with. They had their moments like everybody else, but it was different. But I saw that and I remember thinking, holy cow, what would I do? What would I do in those scenarios? Like, how would I handle that? Um, for a young officer, it comes with those challenges. What did you find the hardest? Let me
No,
ask it this way. Like, what did you find the hardest challenges, but you found the tools to have the most success with? I don't know if that one makes sense.
yeah, I think some of the hardest challenges is that, at the time of the 80, probably about 70 of them were brand new airmen to the Air Force, right?
Mm,
Age 18 to 22, 18 to 22-year-olds are going to do 18 to 22-year-old things,
mm.
especially when they live in the dorms, to the example that you gave. Um, and it's just, hey, how do we create an environment when we are at work that people love being there so that when they go back to their dorms or they go back home, they realize that the things that they do are potentially going to impact the things at work, right? If you go back to the dorms and you act a fool and you get in trouble, realizing that a lot of those liberties and the fun that we have at work it's going to shift and change, right? And so how did I do that? Well, one was creating a relationship with my non-commissioned officers, my NCOs, and
Yeah.
realizing that they were the first time frontline supervisors, and the most important leaders in an organization are your frontline first time supervisors, because they're the ones that have the direct connection every single day with those young airmen or those young employees that are doing the job. And so, how do we create this environment so that they are empowered to lead, but we're also investing in them because they are first time supervisors? And so, they were the tool, right? They were the mechanism by which we created our environment. We created a place that people could thrive and where we were investing in them.
And you were doing this first lieutenant kind of
I was a second
from
lieutenant,
second lieutenant, and
brand
you were
new.
already picking up on these tools, which, and I'm asking you this, and I'm prompting this with intent because as a second lieutenant, how old are you?
I was a little bit older because I was prior enlisted, so I was like 25, 26.
Okay, so you had a little bit behind you. I was 22 walking in
Yeah.
the door. And I I was like hazed into the officer world, not literally, but I remember distinctly, again, different worlds, right? But I remember distinctly working one day, and it was just a crazy night. And I worked labor and delivery as a when I was second lieutenant at this time, and where I'm running from room to room, like babies are just falling out of the sky, and I'm like, oh my God. And I would go run, and I'm looking for some piece of equipment. And I'm like, oh my God. And I couldn't find the text. And I'd go in the break room, and they're sitting there eating. And I'm like, hey, where's the whatever? Oh, it's over here. They never once got up. They just sat there and ate. Sat there and ate, sat there and ate. And I was like, and I'm so busy that I don't have time to think, which I should have just stopped and said, is there some reason why you guys cannot come help? Right. This was just a bad, it wasn't just me. They did this too. It was like a rite of passage that they did to us. Um, and until we stood our ground, um, they did. They kind of continued to do that with us for, yeah, it was quite interesting. So I said it's different worlds, right? And we're all in the military. We're all in the Air Force. You're in the Air Force. I was in the Air Force, but two different cultures on how there's approach, right? Because we have to work literally side by side with them in a little circle team here. I'm not saying that it was correct. And there should have been an NCO in there that was correcting that. But it was an interesting difference to see that. And so my experience would be like very frustrating. Like, how do we correct this? And didn't really have good guidance with that. It was very, like, I reflect now and I'm like, wow, we could have done some things very simple, like you're talking about, that would have corrected that situation. But it started with a nurse manager down, and it probably wasn't coming that way. It wasn't coming with building those relationships with the NCOs in a in a constructive way, to work with us in a constructive way. Like I always think of Richard Branson.
Mhm.
Always remember his quote. He's like, I don't take care of the customers. I take care of my people that take care of the customers. And I'm like, it's profound in its simplicity, right? So you're investing in the NCOs and you're getting to know them and you're implementing your expectations of a culture and they're executing it. You're implementing and they're implementing and executing it. So to see you do that at such a young age, it it's commendable. It's commendable that that is the environment that was already created at such a young age. That's like a whole bunch of leaders I like to go shake my hand to right there. I mean, really, truly. So as you moved on, you know, what started happening? Like, what were you starting to notice as you move? Your group started getting bigger, and what was happening, and how you were developing, and what were some of the setbacks that were happening within that?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. And I think part of that is just realizing that um, not every situation that you go into is going to be the same. So as I continue to progress and go into jobs, and some of them um, more authority, more people, more resources, more responsibility, the environment was different, the situation was different, and the challenges were different. And so realizing that at the end of the day, the core was I still needed to take care of the people. I still needed to take care of the team. And if I did that the right way, they would take care of the job. They would take care of the mission. And um, there's a level of humility that comes along with that, and that I'm not going to get it right every time. I am not going to show up at work at my best every day, right? Like maybe I had things happen at home or my personal life,
Hmm.
and trying to act like I was perfect when in reality, like I wasn't. I had other things going on. And so I think those were some of the challenges that I faced of like, how do I come to work and show people that it's okay not to be your best every day? Like we're human. And that was some of the things that I faced challenges on in my career. And it took me a long time in my career to be able to realize that I didn't have to smile every day or act like things were perfect every day. And that was a
So,
big learning for me.
do you think, I'm going to ask you this question. Do you think vulnerability is such a curious word? And I think for a lot of leaders, confusing. Do you think, or where do you think the balance is between being vulnerable and oversharing?
I think that depends on the person, right?
Hmm.
And I think it depends on what you're comfortable sharing. But I think that if you are going to be a leader and you are going to lead your team, then your team needs to also understand that you are a human and you deal with challenges in life just like they do,
Yeah.
right? And so, you know, uh, letting people know, hey, here's what's, look, I'm not going to be my best this week. I might be distracted this week. And I had one instance, right, where I had somebody one time say to me, like, hey, sir, do you realize that when you're multitasking, like, we all know you and we all realize that you have the best intent in your job, and you know that you love your people and you want to take care of them. But when you're having a conversation with somebody, but you're still multitasking and maybe doing this or doing that at the same time, you make us feel like we're not as important to what you're also working on. And I was like, oh my goodness, that is not my intent. And I am so glad that you know me as a person and know me as a leader, and you feel comfortable enough to give me that feedback. And so with that vulnerability, it comes like being willing to admit that you're wrong and being able to
Yeah.
tell your team that you're wrong, having humility to do it, and having the power and the ability to say, you know what, like, I'm sorry. I think those two words are two words that are not used enough by leaders, to admit when they didn't get something right and to apologize to their team and say, I messed this one up. I'm sorry. I will do better.
It brings, it's so funny. This just happened to me yesterday. I kid you not. Uh, to be thankful that somebody made you self-aware of your impact, I think one is humbling and huge. So I will tell you, short story. I went to the doctor's yesterday. As you can hear, I'm still dealing with this little head cold thing, right? So, it's lingering too long. I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna go to the doctor. And I did. And I came home. Okay, I'm going to preface this that I'm probably a little bougie because I'm a nurse, but I'm huge on customer service. So that's probably more of the issue, right? So I'm sitting in there and the doctor walks in and she turns her computer on. Doesn't even look at me. Nothing. And she's standing there putting her hand sanitizer on, stare at the computer. And I'm immediately annoyed. And I said, "Hi, I'm Donna." And she looks over and goes, "Oh, let me just get the computer warmed up." I mentally hit the ceiling. I was like, "You've got to be kidding me." And and I will tell you that what came to my head, because I have to secure message her to find out what the test results or whatever. That comment is going to happen nicely, but I will say, "Hey, in the future, just so you understand." And if she has any sense, which I think she does, because as we talked, she kind of warmed up, she will hopefully go, "Oh, wow, I didn't realize that that was such a strong message," right? Most likely, she's got 8,000 things in her head and walked in the door and was just kind of doing her thing. But I think it's important for her, and not in some kind of Karen way. Sorry for all the Karens that are nice out there, but in that over the top way, not mean, but an awareness like your people did. Your people were like, "Hey, we know you and we know that you don't have any intention, but at the same time, when you go out of our circle and you do this, it's going to be a problem."
So it totally changed my approach, right? And
Mhm.
so, like, from that point forward for the rest of my career, what I tried to do then was, so I totally did and always do have an open door, right? I know that's just a, I have an open door. And then like, do you really? But honestly, like people would just come into my office whenever they wanted.
Right.
And what I would do was if I was right in the middle of working on something, I would be like, hey, just give me one moment. Let me finish this thought. So they knew, right? Because if I
Yes.
was right in the middle of something, I'd finish that thought and then I could give them my 100% attention, as opposed to them coming in, hey, what do you need? And I still continue to work on it. And then they don't feel like they're as important. So that feedback, it really changed how I operated. And it really, really helped me.
Did that carry over into your home life too?
Yes, I think it did. Although my wife might tell you that no, you still have more work to do on that, which is probably true. But
Well, it,
it did, right? It did help just in realizing to I need to be more present with my kids or with my wife. And like if I'm doing something, then I need to stop doing that and give them my full attention.
so I say that because I just kind of smirked because with my kids, I had to learn, especially during COVID, because we were all multitasking. We're doing work at home and the kids are at school and like I'm literally trying to do both at the same time, which we know doesn't work. But I learned quickly to say to them, let mom finish this. I am doing a text message. Let me finish this so I can give you my attention. Because I wasn't doing that. My daughter's like sitting on a little chair next to my desk. And I think I actually wrote this in a book I had written. And she is just talking away about something. And I have to answer whatever this is. And I'm like, oh, that's really great, honey. I have no idea what she's talking about. And I'm placating, right?
Yep,
And, it was I'm gonna loosely say needs must. It really wasn't. I should have just stopped for a second. The world wasn't gonna end. But at that time, I felt like it was a needs must. Like, I have to get this done and I have to give her attention. And it was that incident that made me realize, like, what am I doing? So when you said that, I'm like, yeah, my kids called me out a couple times too. And I was like, which one are you doing? It's not just a work thing, it's a life thing,
that's
you
right.
know. So, we're getting lessons everywhere that carry across all different communities in our world. So with um so you know, you're picking this stuff up and things keep moving along for you. Obviously your career's going well. Where did you hit a point that you started questioning your life choices? Like, am I doing anything right? Is this right? And I say that because we're like you said, we're human, right? And I'll give you this example. What it feels like and what is perceived do not always match. So when I was a nurse manager, I felt like I was doing a horrible job. We were under a lot of constraints that didn't have control over. I went so far as told my boss that if he saw me hung in my office, that I promised it wasn't a suicide, it was probably a homicide. I mean, it was tense. There was a lot of stuff going on that I didn't have control over. So, I was questioning a lot of life choices, like, what am I doing? Scroll ahead, oh, probably like 7, 8 years later, I kid you not, um, maybe longer. I end up meeting a girl that used to work. Well, I talked to a couple of our people that used to work on a floor and somebody that was working on another floor. And they all said something similar in the realm of, oh my God, everybody wanted to work on that unit. Everybody knew it was like the best unit to work on. And I was like, say what? So, did you ever run into anything like that where you felt one way and it was being seen another?
Um, excuse me. I think I think as a leader, you are always wondering, no matter how good the environment is or the things that you think that you've done, I think you're always wondering still, how can I take this to the next level?
Hmm.
Right? How, I probably had an unrealistic expectation. And so when I went into my first opportunities for command, I was a squadron commander, and my boss's boss came and visited, and he was like, "Hey, what are your goals?" And I was like, "Well, one of my goals is I want to retain 100% of the airmen in my organization. Right? I don't want anybody to get out because they've had a bad experience in this
Nice.
organization." But what I realized is that it doesn't matter what type of environment we create, how good it is, it can be better. But I also realized is that I had airmen who were deciding to still get out of the Air Force, not because they didn't enjoy the environment, but because they had other life goals.
Right.
And they wanted to go achieve those, and they wanted to go do something different. And the experience that they had up to this point in the military or the Air Force didn't align with their own goals or values of things they wanted to achieve. And so I think for me, like, it made me realize that no matter how good of an environment you create, no matter how good of a leader you think you are, um, like, other people have other goals and other dreams and things they want to achieve. And I think that was very eye opening for me as well. And to be able to just help them go do those things.
I was just going to counter that with, I think that, so idealistic, right? You say that, and that might have been you saying that with not as much wisdom behind you at that time.
That's right. That's right.
Whereas now, like I would challenge that and say, you actually in- promoted the right environment that gave them either the stepping stone or the value or the purpose or the courage or the bravery or whatever the word is to actually go explore something else. So, so the measurement should have been, I want 100% of my people to leave to go explore things versus leave because they hate it here. Like we gave them so much purpose and value that they want to go try new things, which I think is a huge testament to a successful leader.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that was very interesting too was that no matter, like, I was like, we're creating a great environment here. And then, we did our surveys, 5 months in to the time there.
The
Um,
surveys.
and, for 85% of the organization, like, I was blown away, and I was incredibly happy about the feedback that we received for the environment that we created. But there was still like 15% that were like, this is still the worst place. And I was like, oh, I took that to heart. I was like, what is happening? Like, why do you feel that way? And what I realized is that um, we needed to do more work in investing in some of our leaders who were impacting the organization in a negative way. And so it might not necessarily be about how you do as a leader at a more senior level, the environment that you create at a more senior level, but if you're not taking the time to invest in those lower level leaders who truly, again, back to the first timer frontline supervisors who are impacting the organization negatively, then that will impact your team more than you ever know.
You could not be more spot on. And I'm going to contend that it doesn't matter at what level, because in the world that I worked in, and I'm not going to implicate anything specific, but in one of the places I worked, it was a senior leader. That was the issue. And all those, what the heck are the reviews called? I can't remember them anymore. But so for the civilian world, every year they do a review. They send it out to all the um, service members, and they're supposed to basically rate their leadership kind of thing. And you have to, like anything, you have to read them for trends versus the word for word. Yeah, and 85% is exceptional. And that last 15%, you kind of have to look at the why. And you picked out that, okay, so some of our leaders needed some more training, so you saw that. we had this situation 7 years, no change, no change, no
Yeah, that's
change.
right.
And the comment, I was fortunate. I asked for a very specific exit interview at a much higher level, and I made the comment, at what point was anybody going to do anything? Like 3, 4, 5 of these reviews that are coming up with the same stuff. Why are you not changing, educating, training something? Nothing, of which they didn't even attune what that impact was on many people and what kind of environment it created.
I agree with you, right? And I think we talked about the very beginning about servant leadership, right? Those leaders serve themselves, and the problem is that when they start early in their career and they start to serve themselves, and it works, they just keep doing it. And when you have leaders above them who either keep doing what you're doing, you're doing amazing things, but they have no idea the impact that it's having on the organization, or they don't care because the mission's getting done and it's making them look good. And now we've created an environment where we've bred leaders who are more self-serving than we are about leaders who serve their team.
And you end up breeding a toxic environment. And this is why, because there's two types of people underneath that. And feel free to disagree or challenge it or whatever, but this is where my mind goes. When you said that, I'm like, oh, yes, because it breeds two types of people. Those that are going to try to please and figure out how to please that self-serving leader to stay in their good graces so they don't have to like deal with the impact, and those that are going to rebel against it. And maybe not rebel in a, you know, pound sand, scream at you kind of way, but trying to bring up information. It will look like rebellion when they're trying to inform the leaders. Like and I say this very confidently because I was that person, that I was like, I firmly believed you need to tell your leadership, especially if you're a SME, or and for the civilian world, that's a special, basically somebody that's very specialized in the field that they're in. They've been in there for a long time and they know their stuff. And they're trying to inform their leaders, hey, here's the good, bad, and ugly we want you to take into consideration. And then they shoot you down or they try to put a thumb on you or whatever they do. And then what happens is that group now divides because it's I'm going to please them, and I'm not going to please them. And then you have just created a very, very toxic environment. And and it's funny that it's kind of an aha for me that you're saying this, because I used to ask myself this question all the time. Like, I don't understand this. Like, these people to me are not necessarily what I would consider mean people. Like, what is happening? I don't understand. And now, just this conversation, I'm like, oh, I think there's some truth in this, that they create that toxic environment because people are trying to figure out how to navigate it and they make choices on how to navigate it. What are your
Yeah,
thoughts?
I often hear times people talk about toxic leaders, and I will challenge back, and the first thing I will ask is like, well, what makes that person toxic?
Right.
Right? Are they bad or are they toxic? Because I think those are two different things, right? Like
I agree.
you can have a bad leader who's just never been developed, who maybe has created a bad or a toxic environment, but doesn't realize that they did it, right? And then when you say, hey, you realize this is what's going on, they're like, oh my gosh, I had no idea, right?
Correct.
And then they do what they want to or they can to show the humility or maybe make some changes. The toxic leader is the one who doesn't care, right? Who's
Right.
created this environment and it's their way. It's you're not going to tell me any better. I'm going to put on this front of, oh, I care. But in reality, you don't listen, you don't change, and the people are just waiting for you to leave. right?
Yeah.
I think to me, that's the difference between the two.
Yeah. No, and that's actually a valid point is like none of us get it right first time, second time. We're all learning and it's sometimes our good intention, we don't realize that there's a consequence, a negative consequence to it because you're like, I'm just trying to whatever. One time I remember I had a meeting with our staff and I wanted to honor them. So I bought these small like succulent plants
Yeah.
for the whole staff, right? And I attached something positive to every single one. And there was a group, not a big one, but there was a group that thought that I was just trying to schmooze them, like trying to schmooze it for a popularity contest. And I was like, it came back to me, third hand and stuff, but I thought, huh? I was lost. Um, I thought I was sincere because I was trying to bring cohesiveness, trying to remind people that y'all have good traits to bring to the table. That was where I was coming from. And it didn't fully interpret that way.
Yeah, and I'll just say one thing that you said just now, right? And you're right. Like we're not going to get it right the first
Mm-mm.
time we're saying. I would say also that like it doesn't matter if you've been leading for 3 years, 5 years, or 25 years. You're not going to get it right every time.
No.
And it's just what can you do to bring your team together to help you get it right? And if you try to be, on your own and you try to think that like I know better than everybody else because I've been doing this for 25 years, you're going to get it wrong.
That's a profound statement. What can you do with your team so your team can help you get it right? I mean so I was at this just popped in my head. I was stationed at Ramstein and I think it was is it the second NAF that was there? One of the NAFs were there. I can't remember which one. For the civilian audience, it's just a level of it's a what do we the numbered Air Force, what are they? It's an administrative
Yeah.
thing, yeah, entity of sorts. Um, and the general that was running it, I'm gonna blank out in his name, of course, but two things about him. He played in a band, right? And when he played in this band, he had a baseball hat he wore, and it had a long gray ponytail attached to it. And one of our docs used to play in this band with him. And when our boss was retiring, I asked them to play, and they did. And he was just you could see the joy out of him, right? And one of his staffers delivered their baby at where we were at. And she was telling me, actually, it was years later because I was at Lakenheath. That's what it was. And she delivered the baby. I found out she worked for this general when he was at the NAF. And she would tell me, she goes, he used to keep a toy box in his room, his office. I'm like, what? He goes, yeah. And when he was really contemplating things, he would be throwing a ball against the wall. Or you never know when there was a Nerf bullet that was going to come straying out. Or, he was an avid biker. And sometimes he'd be like, hey, who wants to go for a bike ride? It's like we'd bring our bikes to work because we never knew if we were going to be riding bikes. And she's like, we loved it. We loved it was a chaos, but not a disorganized, interruptive.
Mhm.
When they understood him, so at first it's a little like, what are you doing? Because this is not how the stereotypical general works. But because when you got to know it, you just really adored him and his process. And it made the work easier. And we looked forward to coming to work.
Mhm.
And you never knew when somebody would be like, look quick, and here comes a Nerf ball or something at you or something like that. And we could think through problems and we could figure stuff out. And you could tell from listening to her exactly what you just said. He gathered his team to solve the problems, to help him do it better. And it's so simple, but so profound. I mean, yeah. So this is going on for you, right? You're having these moments and you're essentially said, we're never going to get it 100%, but you're refining your technique, and you are seeing obviously success because you continue to do it. Although I contend I watched my leader not have success and continue to do it, but there you go. But you continued to hone this. And then what started happening like over time? What started happening with your people that were around you that you were leading?
Yeah, it was super fascinating. I think I had a certain way in which I tried to lead them and empower them and create the same type of environment that this general had created for his team. One that my goal was like, I just want people to love coming to work, and I want to do everything I can to help them grow in their journey to be leaders. And so I had some people that work for me that just kept telling me like, you need to write this down and you need to write a book. And I was like, I mean, I don't know that anybody would actually ever read this. So I had the self-doubt. I had this like, I don't know, that seems like a lot of work. And,
Right.
and this was going on for like 7 or 8 years. And so, but while that was happening, people kept encouraging me. And every time I would talk to some of them, they'd be like, so how's your book coming along? And I was like, it's coming along great, right? I
In
like hadn't even,
quotes.
yeah, I hadn't even started it yet. But what I was doing was the experiences that I was having and the things that I thought that might make a good book, I started to write down. And and as I continued to progress in my career and people kept encouraging me, I was like, maybe I could do this. Maybe
Yeah.
people would want to read it. And so, as I wrote this book on leadership and the lessons that I experienced throughout my career of what I think makes a good leader, I did it not because I wanted to do it. I did it because people kept encouraging me and telling me to do it. And
Which is why I contend that, when we hear, I'm gonna stereotype and tease a little bit because even I joked with you about it. Like, oh, look, the colonel's gonna write a book on leadership. Yay, right? And that's one, but that's not what this was. This was people asked you, sir, we want your book on leadership. So it's Jason's book on leadership, right? It's who you are as the core. Whether there was rank on you or not rank on you, you were still going to have that same leadership style. So it's Jason's book, right?
that's exactly what it became. You know, I did it based off of stories. I did it based off of my experiences. And I also wrote the book that I would want to read. So I am very chaotic. My attention span lasts about like 10 minutes. And and so I realized that like, a lot of books on leadership, to your point, when you were like, oh, here we go again, another leadership book. Um, I was like, well, I think like I want to write this one different, right? I want to write it in a
Oh,
way that engages people and can help anybody learn through not only the things that I think that I did right, but the things that I thought others did right, which I also highlight, and also the things where I think I got it wrong. Because I think that is an important lesson for leaders to learn is like when other people can admit that they got something wrong, which I do in this book, I think it helps them see. And so every chapter is you can read every chapter in 9 to 12 minutes. And I wanted to do it in a way that it didn't take you 30 minutes to read a chapter, which a lot of books are written that way.
right.
And I wanted to do it in a way that like you could read it. It was short, it was bite-sized. You could take some lessons from it and apply and you could apply it to how you lead today.
So I'll share with the audience a little bit. So when Jason and I met um, at the ETAP course, I was just assisting somebody that was teaching, no big deal. And it had come out that part of my business was helping authors, sorry, authors self-publish. And so that's where Jason, you got curious, right? You popped over and said, hey, I'm doing this. And of course, that's when I kind of teased. I'm like, yay, the Colonel's writing a leadership book. Um, but Tell me about this journey. Like for you writing it, what was it like? Because you and I ended up working together, which I'm extremely honored to have been part of this. And I obviously know the book. And I am telling you, it is Jason's leadership book. It's good. It trust me, if it was just like, yay, a book on leadership, I probably wouldn't be doing this podcast. I mean, honestly, like it is what I would call a full circle book. And I'm going to leave it at that because I'm not going to let you guys know what that means. You've got to go read the book when it comes out. You have to read the whole thing because Jason didn't even know, talking to you in a third person, you didn't even know that you had written a book that came full circle until we had read it a couple times. And I'm like, do you understand what you wrote here? And when I pointed it out, you were like, oh my goodness. So what was the writing for you like? What was that process like for you? Especially you've never written before. Not
I
in
had
that
it.
sense.
I had it. I think the easiest thing of the entire process was the title, because there was a single moment in my career. So the book is, the title of the book is Lions in a Parking Lot:
Hmm.
Leadership Lessons Fueled by Positivity, Humility, and Turning the Right Way.
Yeah.
And for me, that was the easiest part of the whole journey, because there's a single moment in my career that totally flipped and changed how I viewed leadership. And it was about halfway through my career. And it was a story about painting lines in a parking lot. And that's all I'll say,
Yeah.
because the story's in the book, and it's right up front in the introduction. Um, and then how I have tried to lead my whole career is creating environments that are focused on positivity, where it's okay to make mistakes, but you got to demonstrate humility. And then you got to be able to stand up and do the right thing, right? Which is
Right.
sometimes hard, but you got to do the right thing. And so that was the easiest part. As I started to write the book, not being what I would say as a writer, that was the most challenging, of being able to just get the content. But as I had the content, it then became very easy for me to come up with the themes that I think are important for leaders.
Right.
And, learning about yourself, right? Humility, and many other chapters and aspects of what I think a great leader should be. And it's very done based off of stories and experiences, and not just me pontificating. So
No,
that
did
was,
you find it reflective or cathartic or anything like that?
I found it fun. As I started to go, I found it very reflective, and I started to remember stories in my career that I was like, oh my gosh, I had totally forgotten about that.
Yeah.
And I found it fun. And the other part about that I found fun was that I had a group of the people that had reached out and said, hey, you need to write this book. I leveraged them, and they were my first readers. And as I finished what I thought was a chapter, I would send it to them and say, hey, what do you think? Tell me what you think. And the more, of course, they're going to give me positive, like, oh, this is great. And I'm like, okay, well, I need your honest critiques. But I think the
Give it
more
to
that,
me.
yeah, but I think the more that they did that made me realize that, like, this is a story worth telling. This
Hmm.
is a book that others need to read. And um, I was just very grateful for the opportunity to do this.
What advice would you give to people that are considering writing a book, their book, whether it's fiction or nonfiction, but just what do you think of that whole process? What was you're through a majority of it right now. You're coming into the final the final stretch right now. When does the book launch? Let me ask you that first.
So
What's the
planning the book,
goal?
yeah, the goal is the 5th of February of 2026. So we are in the final stages. As you said, we're through all of the things, and now it's just having fun and the finishing touches for it. And the 5th of February is my son's birthday, and so I thought that would be a fun thing to do, is hey, if
Perfect.
let's launch it on his birthday, and that'll just be something that is ever just linked together. What I would say is everybody has a story to tell. And that could be many different things, right? It could be fiction, it could be a nonfiction, it could be something like I've done, but I think everybody has a story to tell, and it's whether or not you want to tell that story through a book. And I think also is that you got to be ready for the roller coaster, because it was a roller coaster of, early on I was very motivated, and I was giving myself, I'm going to finish a chapter a week.
Yeah.
And for the most part, I did a really good job of doing that. And then I would be like, I feel great. And then I'd give that book to my beta reader, and she'd come back and I'm like, oh my goodness. Woo. And then I got through, the first 4 editions, and then I gave it to you, and you were like, well, we have some work to do. And then I got it to the editor, and the
Dang.
editor was like, I
What?
had never seen so many track changes and red marks in my life. But once we got through all of that, I was like, oh my goodness, if I compare the first version to the
Uh-huh.
to the ninth version, um, the story doesn't change, the
No.
content doesn't change, the flow and readability changed, and it just made it so much better. So it was like a roller coaster, but one absolutely worth taking.
Yeah. Yeah, that is something for all people that wanna write. They have to, they have to prepare themselves for that roller coaster ride, because a lot of us, we write and we're like, "Yay, we wrote and it's amazing." And I've seen people literally, boom, stick it out there, and I'm like, "Oh boy." So,
And I think the other part too, right? Like, all of this work to get the book written, all of the steps, the beta readers, the writing, the editor, the book cover, the formatting. And I'm like, let's go. We're done. The book is done. And you're like, well, we still have like 3.5 more months of work. And so,
you're
like,
like, "What?"
there's also the roller coaster of like, I know the book is done. What takes so long now? Right. And so it's just the whole process.
Learning that. Yeah, it's the part that people aren't aware of. But I think, honestly, I'll tell you, I think military people are best set up for it because 'cause we're used to hurry and wait.
Yeah, fair point.
And we're used to, constructive, I'll put quotes around that, constructive criticism. Um, and so we can hack that stuff a little better. It's a little hard when it's kind of birthing a baby, it's personal. So,
Yeah.
I know people open the manuscript after it comes back from the editor with one eye, like, "Is it okay?" And then you're like, "Oh, there's blood marks all over it." And it's like, "It'll get better, don't worry." So,
Yeah, and I think my favorite part of the entire process was my 15-year-old Claire. She's very talented at drawing and things like that. And so she had asked, she was like, "Hey, Daddy, can I do the cover?" And I was like, "You want to?" And so she came back with amazing ideas for the cover. And then, we were able to give that to the actual cover artist.
yes,
And he stayed true to
he honored
actually,
that.
yeah, he honored it, and he stayed true to what she created. And I think that's the one of the things I'm most proud of and I've enjoyed the most, is that when I look at the cover, I know like it was the creation of my daughter who had the idea and the vision, and then the cover artist just brought it to life.
Shout out to Kevin Stone Designs, he's amazing. Yep. Yeah, and I was real I knew in my heart that was gonna happen because I know the cover artist, and I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, he's gonna do everything he can to make that a reality because it does. This is personal, right? So we have lines in the parking lot, and the target date is 5 February, and everything's on track right now. We're getting ready for the last stretch for you. And I said, we'll get this last step going. And then I'm like, we have a whole bunch of other stuff to go look at. And you're like, okay. I will say that you're a trooper. Your leadership skills kind of shine through all of this, honestly. Um, Part of servant leadership, I think we'll wrap it up with this, is that part of servant leadership is knowing when to be a leader and a follower. And it's interesting because this book, you had to be both, I had told you from the get-go that I put you in the driver's seat and I sit beside you and tell you there's the blinker, use the brake, here's the gas, but you have to drive it. And you did. You took it with humility and grace, and feedback was never an issue. You're like, yep, you just took it. And I seriously, I joke all the time, like, you spoiled me, I said, because it was like 2 days later, okay, fixed, you know. Um, and you took all the and there was a lot of feedback coming back. I mean, you had it from me, you had it from the editor, you had it from the beta reader slash proofreader that was given input. And that was a lot of feedback coming back, and you took all of it with grace and said, okay, and now you've got this almost finished product. So I think that that gives service to what you wrote and who you are as a person. Um, and I think anybody that gets their hands on this book is going to do better. And I want to point out that this book, even though Jason was in the military, this is not a book for military leaders solely, correct?
That's correct. I took that into account, and I wanted to write it in a way that my experiences that I went through could help any leader in any profession become a little bit better.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you are a leader in any capacity, whether you're brand new or you've been doing it for 20, 30 years, this will be a book to read. Absolutely. So
I appreciate that.
absolutely. All right. So we're going to wrap this up. And Jason, I want to thank you for coming on. It really was a true pleasure to do this interview. I'm super excited for the book to come out for many, many reasons. I'm excited for it to get in the hands of all kinds of people. So for the audience, you already heard the date when it's going to come out. You can actually, where can they find you if they want to track the information coming out?
Yep. On my LinkedIn page,
Mm-hmm.
Jason Kulchar, Kulchar. You find me on LinkedIn, and I am posting updates continuously on my LinkedIn.
Yeah, exactly. So you guys go look there and check it out. And if you want more information on this, you can always email cominghomewell.com. I'm sorry, cominghomewell@gmail.com. And all messages will come to me. And that's all for this week. So we want you guys to engage, share, give comments. All that stuff will come back to me if you email cominghomewell@gmail.com. And we hope you have an awesome week.
Thanks for listening to Beyond the Front Line, a podcast of Coming Home Well. Join us every other Wednesday. And if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and review. Thanks again. And until all are home and all are well.